thank everybody, obviously for your time, and obviously Mr. Huey for all that you've done. So I just want to kind of remind you all of what the flow of this is going to be. Some of you have been assigned the core questions. There are 5 core questions, and I've asked specific ones of you to ask those questions. We're going to give the candidates about 30 minutes to cover those. And then after that, we'll go into a 20-minute period of open questions. So then the 2 board members that didn't get assigned a question will start, and then we'll go, let me know you have a question. I'll acknowledge you, and then you can ask a question. We only have 20 minutes for that section. And then 10 minutes of closing, and Anna will close us out with closing remarks and give the candidate any opportunity to ask a question, anything that they want to ask of us. I just want to remind you and ask you all to turn your phones off. If they're not, make sure they're on silent, and if they're on vibrate, please don't have them sitting on the table, because the mics will pick all of that up. And I think that's all I have.
I think so too. Anna, did you want to add something?
I will, thank you. So I would encourage all of us to listen carefully, to come with an open mind and absorb everything like a sponge, so that we ensure that we make the best decision for our 86,000 kids in our district. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. And all I want to do is just add my thank you, as I have all the way along. You all have been tremendous. And we've got 6 people who are very excited about the opportunity to visit with you. And I know from conversations with all of you and from conversations with people throughout the community, you all did a great job last time of making these interviews as conversational as possible, so that you really got to know who the person was who's sitting in this chair. And they all have been informed by me that this chair is wired, and if we don't like their answer, they will get a shock. No, but I just, this is where it should be fun for all of you. Relax and enjoy it, and I think you've got 6 great people to get acquainted with.
So are there any questions about the flow or about the process? You should have a rubric in your folder with the candidate's name on it. You will get a new rubric for each candidate. And so just want to also point out that there's not a break between the first 2 candidates. The schedule just worked out that way. But there will be a little bit of a break, somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes, depending on the candidate, between the other 2. And that is reflected on your green sheet that you have in front of you.
And
Yeah, and so Elisa is delayed. Her flight got delayed this morning. She was supposed to be in here at 7:30 or so, and she'll be here at about 9:30.
one other quick thing, we're going to try to keep it flowing as much as we can, and Shannon and Laura, whom you've met, and a number of others, and all of Shannon's staff are going to be shuffling people back and forth, and I will bring each candidate in and just say, here is X person from wherever, and then leave it alone. I'm behind the scenes today totally. But if there's anything you need, let us know. And the time is of the essence, and Anna's going to be in charge of the timekeeping and throw stuff at anybody who talks too long, which will probably be the candidate. But we've also told each candidate the same thing, that they should try to keep their answers to 5 minutes or under, which is very difficult for them, because in some cases they could talk or do a workshop for a full hour and a half or a day on some of these topics. But you all have been through that, you're veterans with it, and just relax and be yourselves and enjoy it.
Yeah, so Cameo will be keeping time according to the format that's laid out on pages 2 and 3. I just went over the 5 minutes, 30 minutes for the core questions, and 20 minutes, so she'll keep me abreast of those, and so I will politely try to get us pushed along and wrap up so that we can, again, stay on schedule as much as possible and move on to the next candidate. So don't take it personal. We want to, get to hear from everyone according to the schedule, because they've made their plans to be here according to this timeline, and we want to respect it as much as possible. So I hope that you have read through the guide. I think it gives some wonderful, points out some great things about how to format the questions so that the responses are more conversational and situational. We want to not give them an opportunity for the answer to be a yes or a no. If there's not a response, I will do my best to kind of pull us out of that and move us on to the next question. And I think that's all I want to cover right now.
I know you all know this or think you do, but just a reminder, the rubric you have for making your own notes about each candidate, those will be replaced after each candidate, so you have a new set to go on each time. So do whatever you want to with the first one and write on it and go from there. Okay, I'll go get the first candidate. So, any other thing you need, Madam Chair, or anything?
Just quickly verbalize kind of what each of these interactions is going to look like. If they're going to come in, do what, then what happens after that?
I'm going to bring them in and just say, here's Shawn Joseph from Prince George's County, Maryland. And then I think the candidate should take it from there. They will either sit down, or in some cases, if it's their style, they'll want to come around and shake hands with all of you and then go from there. And then as soon as they're seated, Sharon will welcome them and ask the first question about what brought them to this point.
Okay.
And then when it's over, I will take that candidate out. They will, I think you, well, I probably haven't told you all of that. They will then be meeting with the press. They've all agreed to do that. And then from there, I will have an exit conversation with them, but we will have introduced the previous candidate before that. So, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Everyone,
Morning.
Shawn Joseph from Prince George's County, Maryland. Welcome to one of Nashville.
Good morning. Morning,
Morning.
Dr. Joseph.
Morning.
So, thank you for being here.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank
How are
you.
you? My name is Sharon Gentry. I serve as the board chair, and I'm going to ask each of the board members to introduce yourselves and the district that you represent here in Nashville. We'll start off here with Jill.
Good morning. I'm glad to
Morning.
see you here today. Thank you for coming. I'm Jill Spearing, and I represent District 3, which is Madison, Inglewood, Goodletts, Fullis, the north end of the city.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Joanne Brannon, and I represent District 2. It's in the southeast area of Nashville.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for coming.
Good morning. I'm Thais Hunter. I represent District 6, and it's also in southeast Nashville, bumps into Dr. Brandon's district.
Pleasure to meet you.
Good morning. My name's Amy Frogue, and I represent District 9, which is on the west side of town. I represent Bellevue, Sylvan Park, Charlotte Park, Hillwood, and Westmead.
Pleasure to meet you.
Hi, I'm Mary Pierce, and I represent District 8, which is also on the west side of town with Green Hills, Bellmead, Oak Hill, and the 12 South area.
Pleasure to meet you.
My name's Will Pinkston. I represent South and Southeast Nashville on the school board, and the airport is in my district, so you've probably been to my
Hey,
district.
I've been there.
Welcome.
Pleasure
Good
to
morning,
meet
my
you.
name is Anna Shepherd. I represent District 4, which is going east. It's Hermitage, Donaldson, and Old Hickory areas of Nashville.
Pleasure to
Past
meet
the airport, which means you would have been lost.
Right.
And I represent District 1 in North Nashville. Actually starts Joelton and comes all the way down to Clarksville Highway.
you. Pleasure.
So again, thank you for this opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. I just want you to know that we will start with some assigned questions. So I don't
Sure.
want you to think it's robotic. I've asked some board members to read some specific questions for a reason. There's some core questions that really, we hope, will pull out some of the things that we're actually looking for as a part of what we believed the leadership profile of our next director of schools should look like, and some of those skills and talents that we believe this individual will bring to the district. So I'd like to start off. We have a very healthy packet of information about you.
Yes.
I know that everybody's read it. I've seen highlights and marks and all kinds of things in
Yeah,
their
I think
books.
it's for all 6 of us. I think it's streaming online. It's been
Yeah, you're on
trending.
television. You're on several television stations, as a matter of fact, yeah. Everybody's very much so interested in what's happening here. So
Yeah.
if you could just give us sort of the 30,000-foot view of sort of your experiences and your career and what really interests you about this position here in Nashville?
Absolutely. And if I may, I actually brought some gifts for you here, if I can pass it while we're talking. It helps. Sure. No.
Is that like a demo?
No.
Okay.
No. No, I'm not that good. But I'll go ahead and start. So I've been in education for 20 years now, and I've been fighting, I would say, for equity and access for all children for the past 20 years. I have been an English teacher, I've been a reading specialist, I've been a team leader, I've been a student support specialist, an assistant principal, and a principal, all in Montgomery County, Maryland. Montgomery County is one of the largest school districts in America, and it's also one of the highest performing large school districts in America. And in those roles, we have worked to make sure that children get what they need. I left Montgomery County and became a superintendent of schools in Delaware. And in Delaware, it was a rural school district with about 3,500 students. And it was a school district that needed lots of support. Over the course of those 2 years, we did extraordinary, I think, exciting things to inspire a community and bring a community together, focused on the children and focused on improved achievement. And for the past 2 years, I've had the great honor and privilege of being the deputy superintendent for teaching and learning in Prince George's County public schools. Prince George's County is probably the 17th largest school district in America. We have about 209 schools there, and I'm responsible for ensuring that students get high quality education every day by design. So why Nashville now after these 20 years? Because more than any other place I have seen in recent time, you all have been extremely focused and extremely committed to getting it right for children, not just the school board, but the entire community of Nashville. So I've been here maybe 4 or 5 times at different conferences and things. I've always said, wow, this is a great place. I mean, this is just a positive, engaging town. And over the past year, like I said, as I've watched what's been happening here on the educational front, I feel like I can contribute because I feel your passion, and I know that we can make things right for children. So I'm here today to talk to you about how we go about doing that, and I guess through the questions I can get into more depth about what that looks like and how we as a full community can really give students extraordinary opportunities every day.
Okay, very good, thank you. So we have about 30 minutes to go through 5 core questions. I think you can do the math pretty simply on that.
Sure.
And so we're going to start with Amy.
Okay. Pardon me for reading the question.
No problem.
74% of students in metro schools live at or below the poverty line. To support these students and families, MNPS offers wraparound services to students and families through Community Achieves, which is a community schools initiative. What's your opinion about the community schools approach, and what are other ways of addressing poverty that you have found successful?
Yeah. So, just so happens, this past Wednesday, I was in Baltimore City because we were looking at their community schools. They've been utilizing and focusing on the community school strategy for about 15 years now. And in Prince George's County, we wholeheartedly think that that's the right way, the right approach to look at it. I mean, wraparound services are needed when you have students who live in high poverty environments. As superintendent in Delaware, I actually established 2 community schools working with the United Way and Students and Families First. And the reason, and we saw positive results there. What we did was we included we had a school coordinator went there, and the focus was how do we give kids more access to health care within the schools? How do we go about extending learning opportunities? What's unique about the community schools model is it looks different from school to school based upon what the needs are within an individual community. And it tells families that you're welcome here when done correctly. And it gives them access to the important resources that are needed. As the second part of your question, as it relates to what are other strategies that can be utilized, I think the research over the past 40 years has been abundantly clear about what it takes to ensure that there is a high achievement in high poverty schools. I mean, I think Larry Lazat and Ron Edmonds led that work years ago, and they said, step one, you have to have a safe environment for students. I mean, that's foundational. And but in every school that I've been in, versus whether I was a principal, whether I supervised schools as a director of school performance for 34 needy schools, and the work in Delaware and currently, we focused on culture and particularly looking at the positive behavior intervention and supports systems. That's one of the most researched programs in the country in terms of providing, but it has to be implemented correctly. It's complex, but implemented correctly, it makes things better. Secondly, they talk about the fact that you have to have a very strong principal in every school because the principals, no organization outseeds the capacity of the leader. And so you've got to have a learning leader and then somebody who gets it and somebody who's passionate and understands the sense of urgency for the work within your buildings. And beyond having an extraordinary principal, you've got to feed your teachers, or they'll eat your children, right? So in terms of feeding the teachers, you have to give them
Did you say feed your teachers?
feed
or
your
they'll eat
teachers,
your
or they'll eat your children. Yeah, yeah. You've got to make sure your teachers feel that they're being heard. They've got to feel valued, and they've got to have resources given to them. I mean, one of the things that is a travesty in American education is that, most districts spend maybe 2-3 cents on the dollar in professional development, and professional development varies from school to school. We've got to make sure that the professional development that teachers get is what they need. So we don't just come in and say, here's what we're going to do. We ask them, we observe, we come to consensus about what's needed, and then we make sure we get it to them. But we have to make sure we have a healthy investment in building their capacity. So when you have high-quality principals, high-quality teachers, the next thing he says is you've got to have a climate of high expectations. So as we look in your buildings, I mean, do we have high-quality curriculum for all? You're a district that has about 16% of your students as English language learners, about 12% of your students special education, have special needs. Do they all get high-quality curricula? And do we expect them all to achieve high-quality curricula? Do the teachers believe that all children deserve and should get that curriculum? Now, we've got to make sure that the answer is unequivocally yes. And so looking at our curriculums within our buildings and making sure all kids have access to high-quality curricula and that high-quality curricula is implemented is essential. You've got to have a clear, compelling vision for the work in every building and within this district. I commend you for having a good strategic plan in terms of the start and the ideas. As I read your strategic plan, it's very clear. You want to focus on personalization. You want to give people more autonomy. You want to, really focus on individualization. But the question becomes, how is that executed within the buildings? And do staff understand the vision? When you say personalization, well, what does that look like? Across 140 schools and 29 charter schools within this district. What does that feel like? Are people confused because there are so many things going on? Those are questions we have to answer. But what I'll tell you is if I'm your director, there will be a very clearly defined vision and clear message, and people will understand, in this district, it's about literacy, for example, that we will focus our attention and efforts to make sure that we execute on a few priorities. And also, research says you have to look at how you utilize time within buildings. And that's the X factor. So when you have schools that are 74% free and reduced meals, and you have a reading crisis. I might as well call it what it is. When you have 30 to 40% of your kids reading at level, the question has to become, how are you utilizing time? Are there opportunities within the day for acceleration? Are there opportunities to remediate? Are there opportunities for individualization? Are there opportunities for direct instruction? All of that has to happen consistently, cohesively in every building. And looking at those schedules and being very explicit about the expectation for collaboration. The quality of instruction within any building depends upon the quality of feedback that are within buildings. And you find in high poverty schools, there's limited feedback. People aren't spending enough time in classrooms, enough time talking to one another about what works, what doesn't work, and reflecting. And that's something we can control. And then focusing on the final piece, the seventh correlate that they talk about is what do we frequently monitor within buildings? And that's a big one. I think that's something that most districts across the country just don't get right. They're monitoring data points. They see that kids are not doing well reading, for example, so you have some type of reading assessment that you use. But weighing a pig over and over again doesn't necessarily make it fatter, right? The question becomes, you've got to stop and ask yourself, so what do we know about the teaching of reading, for example, right? We know that kids get better reading by having more opportunities to read materials at their level. So the question becomes, how are we monitoring the degree to how much time kids are reading? Just very basically, that should be monitored and understood. We need to understand. I mean, reading is a very complex phenomenon. I've got a master's from Johns Hopkins University in reading, so I understand very deeply what it takes to build that. But so I say all that to say, when you say what works, the research has been clear for over 40 years that there are these correlates. One, just to repeat, again, a safe, positive environment, instructional leadership at the principal level, at the teacher level. A parent engagement is one that I missed. How do we engage parents throughout the work within schools? I mean, it's more than just asking them, to come in. It's about getting them actively involved. I mean, this past weekend, I had the opportunity in Prince George's County. We run a Saturday school for kids because kids get better when you have high expectations and you give them more time to engage in that. And we had over 200 parents there helping them understand. We use this, well, I won't name the vendor, but we use a vendor, right, that gives individualized learning and online learning to kids to accelerate their growth in a personalized fashion. So we taught the parents how to use it so they could work with their kids over the summer as we come into next year, because it was the end of the session. But parent involvement, a climate of high expectations, a clear, compelling vision, how we utilize time, and what we frequently monitor. We control those variables. You'll dramatically improve results here.
Thank you. Jill?
You've already touched on this, Shawn, but what is your philosophy on human resources, talent recruitment, principal leadership, and development?
You said human resources, talent.
Yes, recruitment, and principal leadership and development.
Okay. I'll start with the principal leadership and development piece first because I wrote a doctorate at the George Washington University on principal pipelines. How do you develop principal pipelines? And it won the American Educational Research Association's Dissertation of the Year for outstanding research. And for the past, since 2009, I've worked with a number of school districts around the country on developing effective principal pipelines, namely Houston, Syracuse City School District, Baltimore City School District. Currently in Prince George's County, we're proud to be a Wallace Foundation recipient on developing principal pipelines. So I say that to say it's been a passion of mine for a long time. In terms of principal development has to be job embedded. And one thing a district as large as Metro Nashville Public Schools must have is a pipeline, because you can't leave to chance one of the most important positions in the district that will, Superman or Superwoman will just kind of plop down and apply for your job. We've got to create Superman or Superwoman, and we can do that. We can do that by being clear about what the standards are for our principals. Be very explicit and clear about what we expect from all principals. We can have our best principals training that pipeline. And as you talk about talent recruitment or development, great organizations move people around to give them different experiences and to build their capacity and give them different skills. So we've got to be very thoughtful when we bring somebody in as an assistant principal. What's their trajectory over the next 5 or 6 years? They'll be in this school for 2 or 3 years to learn this environment and this community, because you have some very high-performing schools within the Nashville public schools as well. And how do we give people opportunities in those schools and give them experiences in more challenging schools to learn, to support, and train? So my philosophy is we do move people around to intentionally build capacity and talk to them about the skill sets we want them to acquire. I think we have to, make sure that our candidates are demonstrating proficiency and getting direct feedback on their work. Again, I believe in a process where if somebody's doing something well, you let them know. If they're not doing well, you let them know, and you're very explicit about what the standards are. Let me direct you to the book that I kind of passed out to give you an example of what I'm talking about here. If you go to the monitoring section there, and you turn to that second page where it says high school monitoring tool. So this is an example of how you can be explicit when you're working with principals and administrators. So right up front, you let them know exactly what you're looking for. You let them know when we come into your building this month, here are the questions that we're going to be asking you. It's not a secret. And you go through and you look for evidence of the quality of those facts, and you give people feedback on it. So when we think about principal development and developing a pipeline within the Metro Nashville public schools, we'll establish a process that will be very portfolio-based, where they'll get frequent feedback on actual work happening in the job. And when we see deficits in skills, we identify people in the district, or maybe we have to bring people from outside of the district who can help build those capacities. As it relates to recruiting and talent development, one of the things we have to look at to get the best talent, we have to pay them. High-quality talent costs. And I know in this district that's been one challenge that we've had in terms of our teacher salaries and moving up the trajectory. So we have to look at a way to look at the resources that we have within this district and streamline to be able to put monies where it counts. And I think if you're going to put money anywhere, you put it in paying folks because quality costs. I mean, everybody wants excellence and nobody wants to pay for it. And we've got to acknowledge and show our staff that we're doing all we can do to raise salaries and make sure that they're there. But money alone doesn't keep talent. I think we've got to really look at the cultures within our buildings. I think we've got to look at being clear and explicit about the career trajectory. People should know that there are plenty of opportunities within this district, that you don't have to go anywhere. And we make those paths very clear and understandable and communicate them to people. And, so in terms of talent recruitment, I think when people feel valued, when we create a culture where people know we're sitting down with them, we want to know their career paths, we direct them, give them the opportunities to learn and grow, they more likely want to stay. There's greater job satisfaction in the work. And in terms of human resources, one of the things that we do in Prince George's County that's effective is we use the Gallup survey. It's called the Insight Survey, to better match our candidates, our teacher candidates, with particular school needs and principal needs. I think that match is essential, not just for teaching positions. I mean, we want the best bus drivers. We want the best food service workers in the building. We want the best secretaries. And I think we can utilize, there are a number of human resources tools that exist that we could utilize to make sure not only are we hiring for technical skill, but more importantly, we're hiring people with the right soft skills and the right passions to work with our children, because it is essential.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will?
Yeah, so, Dr. Joseph, even though we're in the capital city and we're the second largest school system in the state, we've got a legislature that fundamentally does not understand us. And that's been a challenge. It's a legislature that does not prioritize the needs of large urban school systems like ours and does not completely fund them. And how would you approach working with state government to try to educate policymakers about our unique needs here in the shadow of the Capitol?
Yeah, I would say that is our collective job. And so as I step back and talk about Team Metro Nashville Public Schools, this is, this work goes beyond what an individual can and will do. As we work with, I currently work with a school board of 13. And one thing that I think the school board and CEO do extremely well is collaborate and be clear about what the legislative agenda for the school district is, and then work with the state delegation, the county, the city-county delegation, and the county executive to move that work. But I think that collectively it's our work. What I would say is, particularly, I think we've got a wonderful opportunity in Nashville right now with our new mayor and her commitment, her clear commitment to education. I know she's been active in being a part of this process and being a positive part of this process to help engage the full community around educational issues. So I think one of the things we would need to do effectively is continue the dialogue after you have the next director. And I think it would be essential for your next director to be actively involved in the structure of the city government that exists. So, for example, if there's a city cabinet, that director should, if given permission, be a shadow member there, because in that collaboration, lots of communications can happen. I think when I was a superintendent in Delaware, any communication that I would send to the board, it should go, we'd send it in multiple places because it was just important. A lot of times people have challenges just because they don't understand what's going on. So we've got to be very strategic and intentional in terms of our communications with folks. As a board and as a director, we've got to be clear about what the legislative agenda is. And we've got to meet with people frequently about what those issues are and continue to feed them data as you get data. So what you get, they should get in many instances to keep them informed and abreast.
Thank you.
Dr. Joseph,
Yes.
even though Nashville continues to see growth in new residents who have children in our school system, every one of our clusters loses about 40% of the students between the elementary and the middle school tiers to private schools and also to surrounding counties. Besides marketing, what strategies would you utilize in order to reverse this trend?
Yeah. So the question that I would ask is, why are people leaving? Do we have a handle on that? Have we ever surveyed, asked people, why have you left? I think it starts with understanding the why. I would argue most people don't want to spend extra money on an education when they already pay taxes. I think so. If they're leaving, it's probably a quality control issue. So then the next question I ask is, well, what are the quality control issues that we just need to brutally, honestly accept that currently exist that we need to fix? And we need to actively work to fix them. So I did include in your packet, right at the end, there's a little brochure, but I don't underestimate the power of marketing. I mean, when I was superintendent in Seaford, Delaware, I made sure all of our schools had brochures that highlighted what were the excellent things that were happening within the schools very explicitly. I think you have to have a marketing campaign throughout the city, and that's where working with the mayor and the legislature and so forth, I mean, we should have bulletin boards up. We should have, I know when I was in Delaware, we had the little Comcast. When you clicked on Comcast, first thing you saw was the school districts, here's the great stuff that's happening in the district. So, you bombard people with that information. So I don't underestimate the power of communicating the great that's happening. Because if you don't tell your story, people are going to create a story for you. And I know Mr. Pinkston is a communications expert and can verify that and go into much more detail than I about that. But we control our own story. We don't allow others to tell a story. It's interesting. Just yesterday, you all got some of the best fried chicken I have had in a long time. And I know you probably shouldn't say that in an interview, but I went to Hattie B's
I was
yesterday.
gonna actually say that, when I was talking about North Nashville, that you would get the best chicken in North Nashville, but we just moved on. Go ahead.
I went to Hattie B's yesterday, and I had some I don't understand why you call it hot chicken. I was like, I mean, people eat cold chicken? I didn't quite get it, but it was good. But I sat there, and I talked to a young lady. Her name was actually Katie, and she told me she went to MOK High School and is a graduate, and she's at Vanderbilt right now. She just happened to be the person I sat next to as we were talking about what was happening. I asked her, so tell me about Nashville schools. I mean, what did you like about it? And she told me that MOK was a magnet school, and she had an awesome experience. And I said, well, what do you know about other schools and what's happening here? And she said, well, I don't know a lot about other schools because I can tell you about mine. She said, but it seems like people are choosing to go other places now. And I said, well, I mean, why do you think that is? And she said, again, I don't know. I mean, I had a great experience and a wonderful time. But I guess it got me that she couldn't really talk about the good things that were happening in other schools. She just knew people were leaving. And that's a marketing issue that can be fixed.
Dr. Joseph, how do you view the role of standardized testing in schools? How do you balance testing with efforts to educate the whole child, such as offering children access to arts, physical activity, recess, nature, and play?
Yeah. So I love data. I do. And in your packet that you have in front of you, the very last tab is an article that I wrote for the American Association of School Administrators. It's the Superintendent's Journal in January about how Prince George's County utilizes data to really inform instruction, and how over the past 2 years, our focus on looking at targeted data, teaching all 209 schools a targeted process to monitor data has gotten us results in reading. Yeah. So, but I do agree with the general sentiment that we're testing way too much. Just this year, and actually just last week, I came here on Tuesday of this week. My research testing and accountability office just met with me because I charged them at the beginning of this year to get a group of teachers and a group of principals, a group of testing coordinators together to look at all the testing that we're doing, and to give me a recommendation that I could give to our CEO on what we need to cut. I mean, and so we did a survey with all 9,000 of our teachers and just simply asked, so what testing do you use that really matters to you, and what do we make you do that just wastes your time? And we got that feedback, and based upon that feedback, we're gonna slash a lot of the stuff we're asking people to do, because if they're not using it, why waste time? So I do agree that we have to be thoughtful about what data we monitor, but I caution, we've got to make sure we do have data that tells us whether our kids are reading and whether they're progressing throughout the school year. So if I were your director, we're definitely going to have some type of reading and math assessments that we're going to give along the way during the course of a year. So that way, I feel comfortable as I'm reporting to you, are things getting better? Are things not getting better? And if they're not, here's what we're doing about it. That's important, but I do think we can minimize the other things. In terms of the arts, I was an all-state tuba player and all-state orchestra player, so I passionately have an affinity to music and the arts, and that's why Nashville is great for me. I have a 10-year-old daughter and I have a 13-year-old son who would be in our school district, and they are lovers of arts and music, and it's important. I mean, everybody isn't going to love English and mathematics, and there are multiple intelligences that we need to feed within our systems. And so, I think though English reading, mathematics, sciences are our foundation, the arts are equally as important. And I think as we look at building our budgets and looking at our standard programs for children, we'd make sure that there is a balance of multiple opportunities for kids to have, to be well-rounded.
I was reading in your packet that you've done several pieces on the first 100 days to board and superintendent relationships, as well as your principals to get started on their year. Could you tell me a little bit about those, or tell us what that would look like for us as a board in your first 100 days?
Absolutely. So if you, again, I'll direct you to your packets. Let me say this. I think you make or break your tenure in your first 100 days. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe that. How you start leads to how you continue and ultimately end. And there's nothing more important to do in your first 100 days than build a sense of communication, collaboration, structures, and expectations as you go forth. Within your packet, I gave you a draft, right? And that's the first piece in your book that just kind of walks us through. If I were your next director, in our first 100 days, we would really focus on multiple areas. First, the very first thing that we would need to do is establish how we functioned as a director-board relationship. It's essential that we are one team and we're unified. But to be one team and to be unified, I need to understand your hopes, your dreams, your frustrations, your challenges, and where you'd like to see the district in the next year to 5 years. We would have to really lay out and be clear about, so what are our goals? What are our 1-year goals? What are our 5-year goals? So in our very first year, one thing I would encourage us to do is to look at our strategic plan once again and ask, is it bold enough? If someone were to pick up this plan, would they understand where we want to go and how we want to get there, and what are the milestones that we're going to hold ourselves accountable to? That's our initial work. In terms of the first 100 days, the second area that we'd have to look at is, I'd have to look at the district level senior staff. And I know that there are a number of vacancies that are currently in the queue, and we'd have to fill them with extraordinary people. But we'd also have to look at, everybody within the organization, and we'd have to look at the organizational structure, that exists within the district. Are we organized to execute aggressively like we wish to execute? Do we have the right people in the right place, and do schools have the right supports? I mean, I think the function of central office is to serve schools. And I know you are moving to a student-based budgeting model. You just completed that. We've been doing that in Prince George's County now for about the past 4 or 5 years. So I come with that background and experience and know how to, as schools have more autonomy, I believe autonomy is earned too. So that would be something we have to talk about. If somebody's not doing well, I can't say I'm just going to let you just do what you want to do without some checks and balances and thoughtfulness behind what it is we're doing. So looking at making sure that those central office people have the capacity, skills, and ability to support the schools would be essential. On page 4 of the plan, you see we were talking about student achievement, and there are multiple things that would have to be done there. I mean, we would really need to look at our performance. Again, when I went on the website, I didn't see any of the data broken down by race and ethnicity and student groups. That's essential to me because sometimes it masks it. So I saw, for example, there are 39.3% of your students are proficient in reading advanced or proficient on your last state test. 39% overall is low, but I'm sure when you break it down into student groups, what does that look like? I mean, I had wonderings about how are our special education students doing? How are our ELL students doing? How are our African American and our Hispanic students doing? We need to know that clearly and specifically, and we've got to help our schools begin to go into the deep root cause analyses into why does this data look this way? Because I'm sure people are working hard. But we've got to get to the why, and then the how do we move forward with that. So within that first 100 days, analyzing our patterns of student achievement, looking at the expectations, identifying those chronically underperforming schools, and really thrusting into a root cause analysis into why they aren't meeting students' needs, and coming up with real clear, aggressive courses of action that engage the staffs, and that's an important thing for me to say at this point. As we move into the work that needs to be done, Shawn doesn't believe in reforming upon people. Shawn works with people to get this done, because the people closest to the work, you've got very smart, capable, committed teachers and principals, I'm sure, and they just need, but we all have to have real clear conversations about, why do you think this is working, and what research do you have to suggest that? I mean, I'm a pusher in the whys, and then I always ask, I follow a study, reflect, plan, do model. So we study an issue, and then we reflect and say, so who has this issue and has been doing better than us? And that's what I appreciated, as I've done a lot of research on you all, as I'm sure you've done on me here. You all have benchmarked against other districts that have done better than you have, districts that are similar, and districts you've done. I mean, you look at that closely, and we do that same thing with our schools. And then we'll, put plans in place and then monitor whether those plans are working. But that's some of the work that will immediately happen. Then, in terms of engaging in that first 100 days, we've got to bring our community on board. I would expect us all, I would be in that first 100 days in all 9 districts in this region with you all, speaking to your community to just say what's working and what's not working, and then we're going to just listen and take it. Listen deeply, listen very deeply, and then you show people once you've listened. So here's what we're going to do about it. If everybody's saying, that it's an elephant, don't call it a lion, don't call it a tiger, don't call it a bear. It's an elephant, and let's just go ahead and tackle it. That's the approach we must take as we do this work. So we'll go out, we'll listen to the community, and we'll begin to put our protocols in place on how we communicate with our politicians, how we communicate with our staffs, how we communicate with our principals, how we communicate as a board administration together. And you see, there are a million bullets there. What you would get if I were your director is an actual chart, and every time we met, I'd give you updates on where we're moving towards this goal, and it'd be something that was public-facing, so the public can see. Because one of the things one of the things that the public will question is, well, you hired a new director, what is he doing? So they won't have that question with me. We'll communicate before they ask. So it's very clear and upfront. And lastly, in the 100 days that we'll do school visits, I prioritize a lot of my time. I mean, the only way I really know what's going on in the district, and I know we have 140 schools, and again, I've been in 2 districts that have over 200 schools, is I set time in my schedule every week to just be in schools. It's just a time to be in and understand. I never want to be in a bubble where I really don't know firsthand what's happening, because you can walk in a building and sense whether there's high quality learning going on or not. And when it's not, we'll acknowledge that it's not. and we'll make sure that it starts happening immediately. It's just how Shawn rolls. You know,
You need a minute? You need a minute? You want a question? Okay. I do have a question I'd like to ask. And this is around the fact, and I'm sure you know this, that we have a significant number of low-performing schools. And that number is trending in the wrong direction. And so, what do you consider the sort of the crucial central elements, you know, of an effective strategy for turning these schools around?
Yeah. So I think schools that persistently underperform, in my experiences, underperform because they are extremely unfocused. I think a lot of times they underperform because they don't put the right, they try to put a little resource on everything and ultimately don't improve anything. I think that a lot of times they try to work in isolation and they don't, there's not enough attention given to studying what the issues are. They just, sometimes we get into reaction mode. We just want to show we're doing something. And we try to, you know, we just try to throw everything in the kitchen sink at it. So if people come, we can say we're doing this, and this, without any real thought into whether it's working or not. And if it's not working, how do you do it? So the big strategy for me has always been, and it's one of the reasons, as you look at my resume, every place I've been, we've gotten results. And the longer I've been there, the greater the results, because we focus on doing less well. You know, so with our, in terms of strategy, with our persistently underperforming schools, so one of the things I would make clear is that they understand what is the big goal you want to accomplish, right? What's that wildly important goal that you have here? And if you go to the, under the instructional core section of the little booklet that I gave you, and you turn to that second page where it says students achieve, experience the Metro Nashville Public School advantage. In terms of strategy, you know, what I've found is, you know, pick a goal. It could be reading, it could be mathematics, climate, what have you. There are 4 essential components that I think must exist in a persistently underperforming school. One, there has to be real clear data analysis and data analysis protocols to be clear that there is, you know, everybody recognizes there is a problem. And because we all recognize there's a problem, there should be a sense of urgency that's expected. Then we have to make sure that, you know, no organization that I'm aware of has ever remediated itself into excellence. It just doesn't happen. But we find in these persistently low-performing schools, what people tend to do is just try to remediate. And so you have schools in high need with very low expectations. And I've found that doesn't work. What does work is you've got to have even higher expectations. If you're persistently underperforming, you've got to really ratchet up the expectation in terms of curriculum. So when I put critical thinking there, how do we ensure that in every classroom, every day, critical thinking is a way of being? And really, so looking at the educational experiences that children in those schools get. And those schools, when you talk about personalized learning, I really would want to see text and materials that meet the children's needs, and the only way to do that is to have some type of you know, technology-infused curricula that meets kids' needs and pushes them from where they are. But we've got to train teachers to push kids to think in much higher levels. I mean, you have some very strong, high standards in Tennessee now since 2010, and you should be proud of that. The question is, have you trained your teachers to be able to implement and change the way they've been doing business since 2010? I don't know that answer. I will know within my first 100 days. And if they are, great. If they're not, we're going to work to support. But in those persistently low-performing schools, we'll make sure we know sooner than later. And the same thing with, you need to have rigorous instruction, and students need to be engaged in those environments. In curriculum implementation, this is big. One question that I have that I don't have the answer to now is we've got to be real thoughtful about our expectations for teaching reading and mathematics across districts. I find in schools, when I talked about focus, sometimes you have environments, particularly in large districts, where there might be 10 or 20 different reading curriculums happening within the district. Some are good, some are bad, and things are all in between. I believe you've got to be real clear and real consistent about that reading program that you have, particularly in your persistently low-performing schools, because you got to make sure people know what they're doing, because most kids fall behind in reading not because they innately can't learn it. It's because they've got poor teaching, or there are some health or hearing, particularly in high poverty environments where you might have health issues that impede the process. Kids don't have glasses. They can't really hear. And those factors contribute to not being successful. So we'd make sure that in those schools, kids have access to the health care that they need. They have access to, if they need glasses, we'll find a way to get them glasses. We'll give them the supports that they need.
Anyone else?
You talked about, I think, wrote about changing culture in schools, and I was wondering how you went about changing cultures, if you have certain strategies or methods you use.
So in about, I guess, 2005, I came across a powerful book, and that book was called Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. And essentially what it says is that all organizations have a problem, and the problem is us. It argues the only way to fix the problem is to fix yourself, and to really begin to self-reflect on those things. So it's easy to say, very hard to do, but the Arbinger organization has a very powerful method to help you think about that, to constantly reflect on how you're impacting others. And the philosophy becomes, as you're thinking about your work, if we can get the organization to start thinking about not what they need, what I need as an individual, but if I can get people in the organization to start thinking about what others need. So my goal is to work to help Will accomplish his goals, and Will's goal is to help Alyssa accomplish her goals, and hers is to help Amy. If we begin to get outside of ourselves and focusing outward towards an organizational goal, we can move forward. So easy to say, hard to do, but within Prince George's County over the past 2 years, we've trained over 1,000 people in moving towards that way, and things have gotten better. So for me, the big piece in the organizational culture piece is being clear about what our mission is, what the organizational mission is. And the organizational mission has to be bigger than our individual missions.
Okay, I have another question then.
Yes.
So onto this, just to pull the thread some more on Amy's question about culture. So one of the things I firmly believe is that, my dream is to be able to walk into a school or, onto a school property and ask anybody, whether it's the cafeteria worker, the bus driver, the janitor, what do you do? And that their answer to me is, I help provide high-quality education for the students in this school.
Yes.
Regardless of where they are. So how do you, so we talk about, culture change. Can you give an example of where you've actually been able to establish that vision and have it embraced by everyone?
Yes. Yes. So that now you're talking Malcolm Baldrige language, right? And I participated in Malcolm Baldrige work for a long time. And so how you do that is, first you have to have that clear, compelling goal, and it should be up posted everywhere. I mean, I noticed when you walk into this building, the first thing that should have hit me was, this is our mission and vision. Every time we get up and speak, I mean, we start with, here's our purpose. and you know, the push is how do you help people live that work? They got to see it, but we've got to live it. I mean, there's I live by this poem that goes, I'd rather see a sermon than to hear one any day. I'd rather one should walk with me than just to show the way. The eye is a better pupil and more willing than the ear. Advice may be misleading, but examples are always clear. And the very best of teachers are the ones who live their creed, for to see good put into use is what everyone needs. I can soon learn to do it if you let me see it done. I could see your hands in motion, but your tongue too fast may run. And the lessons you deliver may be fine and very true, but I'd rather learn my lesson by observing what you do. For I misunderstand you and the fine advice you give, but there's no misunderstanding how you act and how you live. All right, so the question becomes, how do we act and live? Are we living out our vision and mission? So when I was principal of Roberto Clemente Middle School, just to operationalize your question, and this was, you know, I left in 2005, so this is 11 years later, and I can tell you, you know, the vision statement of Roberto Clemente Middle School said that, you know, we would eradicate the achievement gap and teach students about the value of service. It's very simple. And we said we'd do that through pride, personal responsibility, respectful interactions, intelligence is effort-based, diversity is celebrated, and we'd ensure a safe learning environment. So we said if that is our vision and mission, then everything we do in this organization aligns to this. And the things that are nice but don't align don't get in the budget. And that's why, you know, as we come together and we look at what our strategic plan 2.0 would be, we'd have to be really clear and know that this work is important, because what we're saying when we say this is our mission, this is our vision, this is what we're doing, is we're saying all that other stuff is nice, but this is what our budget is going to fund. And people will see that there's an alignment between our walk and our talk. And that's how they begin to understand it and live it, because they'll start asking for stuff and we'll say no, because it's not in our mission and vision. It's not what we're aligned to do over the course of these next 5 years. It's nice, just doesn't align.
What would be a specific example that where you've had to make a hard decision about cutting something from the budget because it didn't align with the vision that you had set out?
Yeah, that's just last year. So, you know, look, every year is one of those hard decision years in this time that we live in. But last year in Prince George's County, I had to cut $12 million from my divisions. And we had just completed our strategic plan. And our strategic plan, and if you turn in your book to right behind the instructional core, you'll have an executive summary of what our strategic plan says. Essentially, there are 5 areas. We have one goal, and that one goal for the district is outstanding academic achievement for all students. And to achieve that, there are 5 areas that we're focusing on: academic excellence, high-performing workforce, safe environments, family community engagement, and organizational effectiveness. And we're very clear what our outcomes are. So when you got to cut $12 million, you say, okay, what are those things that we're doing that don't affect these areas? And more importantly, we've declared that literacy is going to be a focus within our district, that everybody understands. So I winded up cutting maybe 19 positions out of the budget as a part of that $12 million that I had to cut. But I realigned some of those monies over to focus on the literacy initiatives. So I think we added 5 positions to be able to provide support to 12 schools at a time, instructional specialists to be able to go in and provide technical supports. But what we cut were, you know, the consultants. It was some of the programs that we were doing that didn't show any effectiveness at all. And that was one thing that our CEO and board were clear about. We've got to start evaluating some of these big money items we're putting money on that we don't know whether we're getting anything out of it. You know, what's the return on the investment? If there is no return, cut it and reprioritize it. So last year, we had to take a $12 million shift. But in that shift, it just helped us focus better on what we said we were going to start doing now.
Dr. Joseph, one of the most gut-wrenching decisions that we have to make as board members, in my personal opinion, is closing schools. And we've had to do that before. And, the students and the parents are in the audience watching our decision-making, and it's very tough to do that.
Yes.
Have you ever had to make a really hard decision and close a school like that?
So we closed 2 schools this year. And one school that we closed was a school that had a special autism program. So you had families who were devastated, as well as whenever you close a school, it's devastating because schools are the hub of community. And when you lose a school, it feels like you lose a piece of your community. You lose a piece of the fabric of the history, of a community. So they're the hardest decisions that a board and a superintendent will make. But I think when those decisions have to be made for a multitude of reasons, the best thing you can do is, one, be present. So when we closed those schools, I was the one standing there in front of parents, and I made it a commitment to answer every question that any parent would have. If we were there till midnight, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, we'd be there, no rush. We made sure that parents were clear about the process of change, understand the why. So you start with the why. And even though it's still hard when they understand the why, you've got to be very active in the transitions of that. So every parent in that school had someone directly assigned to them, and they had their cell phone number, that they can call them at any time and transition them. We made sure that those parents had someone from the staff with them as we showed them the new schools that they were going to. And we made sure that the principals were available to meet with those parents to talk about their children's individual needs as we made those shifts. I think school closures don't just come up out of thin air. We know years in advance that, enrollment in a particular area is getting low. I think you put communities on alert as soon as possible. And you deal with there'll be the rallies, there'll be the outcries and things, but and I also, I'm a believer in sometimes we got schools that are underperforming that need to close. And a lot of times we don't talk about that, but that is a reality sometimes that could potentially, exist, or they need to come back in a new way. And in those instances, you're just upfront with people. I believe in being honest. It's not about, sometimes it's not a popularity contest. And at the end of the day, we've got to live with ourselves as the board members, as a superintendent. You've got to be able to look in the mirror and answer the question, did I do the right thing on behalf of this organization? You can say yes, people are going to be angry with you. But in your heart, you can live with yourself because you just had to do it. But you let people know in advance. You are there. You communicate what needs to happen or what are the options very upfront. When the decision is made to close a school, you're present. We don't run from it. We stand right there in the fold, and we make sure the transition is seamless. I think that's important. At the beginning of the packet that I gave you, I start off with a quote from a gentleman by the name of William Bridges, who talks about managing transitions. And he talks about it's not the endings that kill you, it's the transitions. So we make sure that the transitions are seamless.
Dr. Joseph, thank you so much for being with us today. We've learned a lot about you this morning. Is there anything that you did not have the opportunity to share with us, or do you ever have any questions of any of us?
Yeah, of course, one question that I have, if each of you can tell me, what are you looking for most in your next director? Individually, yes.
A sense of urgency. I've said this a couple of times. I said it in a conversation with Jim. We do not have the luxury of time. And so I think it was embedded somewhere in Dr. Brannon's question and definitely implied and could be inferred from the other questions that are asked. We're losing students. Mm-hmm. We're either losing them not just as a result of them choosing to go outside of the district and attend other types of schools. We're losing students in the terms of achievement. And we are not, if you look at it, and it goes beyond the priority list, because the thing that's important, and I think we tend to forget, is that there are priority students in every school.
Yes.
And so we've got priority schools, we've got priority students, and as that priority schools lists grow, we're talking about hundreds of students that we're losing. And as those students within those schools are not closing the gap in their level of achievement, we're losing those students. And so what I'm looking for is my personal search is for someone who comes with a sense of urgency, a clear understanding of, not just our strategic plan that, everybody wants to give us a pat on the back. I take that as a pat on the back for having one. I don't know that that strategic plan reflects the sense of urgency that it needs to reflect. And then, that willingness to make those hard decisions. It says, you can't have, you can have what you want, you just can't have everything you want. And so if what you want is high-achieving schools, at least the opportunity for students to learn in every school building, if you want Metro Nashville Public Schools to be the #1 choice for families, those are decisions, those are desires that have to be reflected in the budget. And those are desires that require talent and resources that imply and show clearly, not just to the board, but to the central office and to the community, that there's a sense of urgency in meeting the needs of the students that we haven't been meeting to date. That's my answer.
And just a quick comment, I put in under the monitoring section, you'll see right up front that that data chart. As a director, I'd make sure that the public will clearly see how all schools are doing right up front, because putting the data out front, I think, creates that sense of urgency to say, so what are you doing about it? And so I agree with you. Urgency. Others?
Anybody else
Mary,
want
go
to
ahead.
I think to add on to Dr. Gentry's sense of urgency, along with that, what I know I would love to see is someone who insists on an authentic education, that we're not just using possibly an inflated grading system or the marketing efforts that we put out look really good on paper, but possibly the reason some of our families are leaving is because they didn't find it to be authentic once they experienced the schools. And so I would want to make sure that we're coupling a sense of urgency with insisting upon that they're authentic results.
Looking for a great communicator. I have a professional bias. I happen to believe that 9 out of 10 problems are communications challenges and opportunities. So if we can solve that, I think that takes care of a lot of other issues.
Yes, I as an elementary literacy person, I'm very interested and concerned about our low reading scores, not only in Metro, but across the state. Certainly a sense of urgency around literacy. Also, with our high poverty, someone who knows how to address that in such a way that every child has what they need to succeed. We have a comprehensive literacy initiative, yet our exceptional ed students are left out of that. To me, that's a travesty. All of our students, it's not comprehensive if we're leaving out any population that needs support in literacy.
I agree.
And the fourth thing is thinking about culture. This district has, the teachers have lived in a culture of fear for about 10 years. And, some people say that's not true, but we hear it all the time. When I go out, I hear it from principals, I hear it from teachers. And yet we haven't been able to grapple with that in such a way that we recognize it. And if we don't recognize it, we certainly can't change it. So those are some of the issues that are important to me as we think about a new director. Thank you.
I echo everything they've said, but also I am looking for someone that our children can look up to. Someone that when you walk into those buildings and you visit those schools, our children can connect with that person and say, ooh, I can do that too. Someone who has walked the walk, talked the talk, but also risen to a level that our children feel that they can also rise to. And someone also that can actually just a really strong, bold leader. Thank you.
Yes, as a former educator, I too want someone who can build that motivation within students. It's so important for all of our students to feel that they can accomplish great things. And so we need someone who can move all of the entire system in that direction. I appreciate your coming and enjoyed listening to your presentation.
Dr. Joseph, just to reiterate, I think that we're all looking for someone who has a sense of urgency about moving the needle for all of our students, and especially our students who are high-need students. And we have a plurality in this district. We don't have a majority race. We have, you heard, 75% of our students are economically disadvantaged. We have over 100 languages spoken in our schools. And so communicating with all of our students and all of our families and making them feel like they're part of a cohesive district is very important to me, and I think to all of my colleagues as well.
Me. I think everyone sort of touched on issues that I would have hit, but I would say some of the key issues are improving our communication, meeting the needs of our low-income students because we have such a high population, and ensuring that every child has access to a rich, broad curriculum, educating the whole child. But I think if I had to pick one, I would probably say changing the culture here. For the teachers and for all of everyone that works in the schools, because I think that if you can create a culture of support coupled with high expectations, as you mentioned, it will change things. And I think the right person to do that is someone that would be able to bring healing to the district and who would be a servant leader, which I think you understand from a quote that you put in your resume.
Okay?
So, you know, what I would say is the good news is when you get to this level, there's a history behind me. I mean, you can, and I encourage you, I mean, you can call any board member in Montgomery County, you can call any board member in Seaford, Delaware, you can call any board member, any of the 13 board members in Prince George's County, and they'll tell you, you know, Shawn talks and his talk and walk are pretty consistent, you know. Education is transformative for children. I mean, you know, I grew up, I'm the first person to graduate from high school, you know, my family, right? And, you know, it was because of strong mentors in schools that you know, I can sit here. And it's funny, this week, actually just this week, I got a little invitation here from a student, a former student of mine. Her name's Maya, right? And she's graduating now from Spelman College. And she sent me a, you know, LinkedIn has changed the world, so, you know, you kind of connect with people. So she asked me for my address, and she said, "Dear Dr. Joseph, I did it, and I want to thank you for all of the years of mentorship. I'm an English major because of how you inspired me way back in 8th grade at Roberto Clemente Middle School. I remember you told me that you would hire me if I ever finished, so you can put that contract in the mail." With a smiley face, and you know. Throughout my career, I mean, I try to build relationships, you know, and substantive ones. And if I were here, one thing I would speak with all staff about is mentor a student. You know, I'd expect every adult to really have a meaningful relationship with. Just pick one, but go deep with it. And I would do that. I would model it, you know, myself with a couple of schools within our district to make sure once a week I popped into that school, you know, checked on the student. I don't mind giving out my work cell phone number with parents' permission, you know, to be able to do that because we have an opportunity to transform lives one child at a time, and I wake up every morning recognizing that. I put in my writing that I got into education because I met a student who couldn't read when I was at Lincoln University. I mean, I was going to be a biology major because I wanted to be like, you know, the first black doctor I ever saw. His name was Cliff Huxtable. Right, and you know, in my community, that was the only black man that I saw who was Dr. Somebody, you know. So, but when I met Gary in my junior year of college, I just didn't understand how we live in a society where we allow a child not to be able to read. And you know, 20 years later, I'm here because you have Garys that we can save, and beyond the Garys. You have others who just need excellence. Even, you know, the question becomes, it's not just about the neediest amongst us. Even our good can be better. They just got to be pushed. We got to have the right leaders and the right people pushing them. So I thank you, and I hope we have another opportunity to speak so we can further discuss how we would really put steps in place to make Nashville the premier district in America. Urban, suburban, rural, doesn't matter, just the best.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're gonna, the next candidate at 10:05.
A little bit of a break.
Pay teachers more. Bus drivers more.